Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for giving me the privilege to speak with you. So the topic of my conversation tonight is a healthy mind and a healthy body. So that mind-body connection has been known since the time of Hippocrates, and it was actually part of his doctrine and thus our Hippocratic oath. So as physicians, we apply that every day to our practice. As medical science has advanced, we've gotten to understand what that connection involves. So one interesting thing that I'd kind of like to talk about tonight is the effects of chronic stress on our brain and on our body. So there's actually proven research that shows chronic stress can physically alter the brain structure and connectivity and cause a physiologic change in our brain and our bodies. So when exposed to a stressor, there's a chemical that's released called cortisol, which naturally is a potent anti-inflammatory that is vital in helping in stress responses by mobilizing sugar stores for energy and modulating inflammation. So when in the correct situation, cortisol is a very helpful chemical and necessary. In the brain, it also plays an adaptive role to facilitate those fear-based memories to try to prevent re-exposure to the stimulus. So that's necessary for our long-term survival. But long-term exposure to stress and thus that chemical cortisol has shown to be maladaptive and have a lot of ill health consequences. We've seen that people who have long-term exposure to cortisol can have a actually sensitized physiologic stress response or an inappropriate stress response that gets recruited in times when it's not necessarily needed. So what does that relate to? It can affect many health conditions, including those that we see neurologically. So one thing I see commonly in my general neurology practice and get asked about quite a bit is concern for memory loss and dementia. So I thought I'd focus on that a little bit. Dementia is a term that we use to talk about a neurodegenerative process, so something in the brain organically that leads to cognitive impairment. So it doesn't affect just memory, but other cognitive functions, including executive function, even personality and behavior. So dementia is that general term that we use to discuss neurodegenerative disorders. Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia, so oftentimes people equate the two terms, but there's actually many different types of dementia. But Alzheimer's certainly is the most common and represents about 60 to 80% of the cases that we see. Pathognomonic for Alzheimer's dementia is memory loss, as opposed to some of the other less common dementias. Initially, it may be subtle, and that often is what brings people in concern. Is this normal? Is this normal aging? Or is there something else I should be concerned about? So at first it's subtle, but eventually it does progress to the point where it begins to affect activities of daily living. And that's when we know that this isn't normal aging and there's something pathologic going on. It is generally a very slow process, though, with the average survival following diagnosis about a decade. So we know a lot about dementia and Alzheimer's specifically. We're not yet to the point of having a cure or prevention, but we know a lot about it at this point. And one thing that has been clearly proven is that there are different factors that are involved, and that it's not just a genetic thing. I often get asked, and people come in worried, there's a family history. My mom had Alzheimer's. I had an aunt who had Alzheimer's. What is my risk for developing Alzheimer's? Well, the truth is that the genetic risk for early onset, which is the less common, is actually very small, and only about 1% of all Alzheimer's cases. The more common form, the late onset, so over the age of 60, is still that genetic link is not 100%, and there's other factors that are involved. So although sometimes it seems like it clusters in families, and in those cases there can be a genetic predisposition, it's a different type of genetics where it is not only dependent on that gene. There are definitely other factors, including lifestyle and environmental factors. And so that's where kind of the discussion for tonight comes in. So there have been proven studies and research showing that there are things that you can do, even with a genetic predisposition, that can reduce your risk of cognitive decline and thus conditions such as Alzheimer's. So one thing is keeping socially engaged. So it seems kind of common sense, but actually they've taken time and money to research this and have shown a direct correlate with people who remain more socially engaged. So having friendships that are meaningful, keeping in touch with family, keeping active in different hobbies and groups and book clubs and things like that actually makes a difference. And those people, even with that genetic predisposition, have less of a chance of going on to develop the disease. Other thing that is very important is getting enough sleep. So women in particular, they have more difficulty falling asleep and maintaining good sleep. They did a study through the National Sleep Institute that showed women on average got only about 6 hours of sleep per night, where recommendations are for a good 7 to 9 hours. And again, it seems common sense, but there are actually physiological things that are occurring in your brain at night while you're sleeping. So the nighttime when your brain is supposedly at rest is the time that it is recharging, it's consolidating those memories, it is getting back its strength for facing the next day. In addition, what's really neat is they've actually started to see in studies that there's greater clearance of amyloid, which is the protein that's pathognomonic in Alzheimer's disease. So there's clearly a link there that adequate sleep is important. So as women, we often say, oh, we'll sleep later, I got A, B, and C to do, but the truth is getting that 7 to 9 hours of sleep can really make you more productive and make for a better day and overall better brain health. So it's really important. Other thing I don't have up here, but as equally important, is reducing vascular risk factors. So that ties into some other things that the other members of the panel will discuss as well, but vascular risk factors are things that increase plaque or blockages in our blood vessels. We've seen there's a definite correlate with that and development of Alzheimer's and dementia. So that would include things such as eating healthy, eating cardiac wise diets, so low in fat and cholesterol, again, has made a difference, not smoking, things like that. And then finally, kind of tying back to the beginning of the slide, reducing stress. So they have seen, again, with this constant exposure to cortisol that can increase the risk of developing memory issues and cognitive decline and thus dementia. So finding ways on an everyday basis to reduce stress is very important, not only for your psychological health, but literally for your brain health and for preventing things such as dementia and Alzheimer's. And Kathleen here is going to help go into some of those ways that you can reduce stress and find time during the day. So what can you do if you're concerned, if you're having memory loss and there's a family history, you're just not sure, is this normal aging, is there something else going on? Certainly seeing a physician and getting an appropriate evaluation. A lot of times I come across that there are many other factors as well that are influencing things, and oftentimes it's good news. And then you don't have to worry about the extra stress of thinking that you have that. So it works out for the best. But if there is a problem or there is something that needs to be addressed, there are things that we can do. There are medications available that could potentially help slow the rate of decline or change the course to some degree. The other thing is equally important with this condition, that there are a lot of other resources that can help caregivers and families, because oftentimes it is those who struggle the most. So there are things that we can do and can address and make a difference. So I'm going to let Kathleen kind of take over to discuss some ways to reduce stress.
All right. Well, you all have taken the step of coming out and being social, so you have one thing off of your list that you have to do. And I want to look a little bit now at kind of an action plan for how to reduce stress. And so this is just one strategy that you can use. Some other great strategies are sleep management, good sleep hygiene, exercise, which we'll talk about in the next go around here. But meditation is a really great tool. And as a physical therapist, you generally think of us strengthening people or lengthening them or improving their balance, and we do all of those things, but there are some of us who tend to hold a lot of stress and guarding in our bodies, and those people actually need to learn to down train and teach their nervous system to rest and get out of that fight or flight stage. As we talked about before, that cortisol can have detrimental effects when it is in our body over a prolonged period of time, but meditation can have some awesome effects on our body and on our brains and on our mood, even in the short term. So even with one episode of meditation, they saw that it dampened the genes that have an inflammatory response, and it promoted genes that have DNA stability, so that means longevity. It can improve your attention over time, reduce your blood pressure, reduce stress, obviously, which is what we're getting after. And when they looked at the brains of people who had been meditating for a long period of time, they saw increased gray matter in the areas of the brain that are associated with memory and with emotional processing. So wouldn't it be nice if we all had more neurons working for us about emotional processing? That it can increase our mindfulness and make us more empathetic, compassionate people, which is something to strive for, right? Make us easier to be around. So one great thing that we as PTs love about mindfulness meditation is it fosters that idea of a mind-body connection. So your body is not just a vehicle to carry your brain around. They actually talk to each other quite a bit. And when it comes to stress or even pain management, it matters that you know what's happening in your body and you have, I'm just gonna set this down, that you have a talk going with your body about what's happening there. So being able to pay attention to your breath, being able to pay attention to how you feel things through your body is a really important way to be able to center yourself. The goals of meditation also include the idea of being present. So we often are in the past or in the future, right? I didn't put the laundry in. I'm sort of annoyed at how Lauren responded to that last conversation we had over the phone. I shouldn't be annoyed with Lauren. She just had a baby. That's really unfair. I'm not a compassionate friend. And that is the monkey mind, friends. So if you imagine a monkey just kind of jumping from tree to tree, limb to limb, thought to thought, isn't that what wakes us up in the middle of the night? I love that idea of a monkey mind. Or an inner critic, the person telling you that you are not a good friend and you're not compassionate because you didn't think of Lauren's needs first. So what would be great is if we could recognize we are not our thoughts, right? Our thoughts occur within our mind, but maybe we can just kind of experience them, recognize them for what they are, and then let them pass. So, some basics of how to meditate, because you're all gonna do it. I don't know if you picked up on that, but I would like you to be alert. So maybe 11:30 at night isn't the time to meditate if you're feeling a little sleepy. I'd like you to be still so you can be present with your body without fidgeting, without trying to fix anything. Be present in the moment, and this is great, be friendly. The idea is that our minds are meant to, our minds are like puppies, right? Puppies are just by their nature wild and naughty and adorable. And our minds are just wild and naughty in that it's just the nature of the mind to think and thought and grab and move. And so just being is a great skill to develop and can really develop your attention. So I want you guys to think about that if your mind wanders during the meditation, you're just gonna bring it back to the breath in the same kind of friendly attitude you might redirect a puppy. We're not gonna chew on that chew. We're just gonna go over here and we're gonna do this thing now, so. You guys, I want you to breathe however you wanna breathe today, however your body goes, but if you start a meditation practice, it's worth thinking about learning to do a diaphragmatic breath. That is using that muscle underneath the rib cage to take a nice full belly breath or a lower rib cage breath. But today, you're just gonna go and notice what your body is already doing. And now we're just going to do it in whatever posture we're already in. Upright spine, alert, and we're going to be present. So what I would like you guys to do is sit up away from the back of your chair, just so I know your spines are kind of upright against gravity. And I want you to start settling into a comfortable position. So maybe that looks like your hands are on your lap. And I want you to allow your eyes to close or keep them open with a softened gaze sitting in front of you. You're going to begin to take several long, slow, deep breaths, breathing in fully and exhaling fully. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth or nose. Allow your breath to find its own natural rhythm. Bring your attention to noticing each in-breath as it enters your nostrils, travels down to your lungs, causes your belly to expand. And notice each out-breath as your belly contracts and the air moves up through the lungs, back through the nostrils or mouth. Invite your full attention to flow with your breath. Notice how the inhale is different from the exhale. You may experience the air as cool when it enters your nose and warm as it exhales. As you turn more deeply inward, begin to let go of the noises around you. If you're distracted by sounds in the room, simply notice them and then bring your intention back to your breath. Simply breathe as you breathe, not striving to change anything about your breath. Don't try and control your breath in any way. Observe and accept your experience in this moment without judgment, paying attention to each inhale and each exhale. If your mind wanders to thoughts, plans, problems, simply notice your mind wandering. Watch the thought as it enters your awareness as neutrally as possible. Then practice letting go of the thought as if it were a leaf floating downstream. In your mind, place each thought that arises on that leaf and watch it float down the stream. Your breath is the anchor you can return to over and over when you become distracted by your thoughts. Notice when your mind has wandered. Observe the type of thoughts that can hook or distract you. Noticing is the richest part of the learning. And with this knowledge, you can strengthen your ability to detach from thoughts and mindfully focus your awareness back on the qualities of your breath. Practice coming home to the breath with your full attention. Watch the gentle rise of your stomach on the in-breath and the relaxing letting go on the out-breath. Allow yourself to be completely with your breath as it flows in and out. You might become distracted by pain or discomfort in the body, twitching or itching sensations that draw your attention away from your breath. You may also feel feelings arising, sadness or happiness, frustration or contentment. Acknowledge whatever comes up in your thoughts or story about your experience. Simply notice where your mind went without judging it, pushing it away, clinging to it, or wishing it were different, and simply refocus your mind and guide your attention back to your breath. Breathe in and breathe out. Follow the air all the way in and all the way out. Mindfully be present moment to moment with your breath. If your mind wanders away, gently notice without judging, be it a thought, an emotion, or a sensation, and gently guide your awareness back to breathing. As this practice comes to an end, slowly allow your attention to expand and notice your entire body, and then beyond your body to the room that you're in. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come back fully alert and awake. The breath is always with you as a refocusing tool and can bring you back to the present moment. Set your intention to use this practice throughout your day to help cultivate and strengthen attention. And that's from the University of Wisconsin. Thank you.